Thanks, first of all, for inviting me to this user meeting of FAIRmat. It's actually the first time I'm speaking at an NFDI consortium's user meeting or any of this kind. Let me introduce myself very briefly. I'm Brit Redöhl. I'm working for the DFG head office for more than 20 years now. I started in the Department for Collaborative Research Centers, and I'm still there, being responsible for a number of collaborative research centers, but also clusters of excellence. And apart from that, I'm sort of responsible for research data management within collaborative research centers and clusters of excellence. I am not an expert in NFDI consortia and the program, so please forgive my shortcomings on that end, but I was asked to speak a bit about research data management in collaborative research centers, and I know a wee bit about that, so I'll try to do that. I did not prepare a PowerPoint presentation, so I give you the pleasure of not having to read and listen at the same time. You can fully concentrate on the listening. I tried to speak slowly, so I hope you can follow all the way through the talk. Now, I was invited, as I said, to speak about research data management in collaborative research centers, and I try to touch a few aspects which hopefully one or the other is new to you, so you get something out of that. What we observe actually for the last 20 to 30 years is an increased importance of research data management. I remember when I started with the DFG, this was hardly a topic, but it then very, very rapidly began to increase. And that is followed by a number of rules, regulations, but also recommendations with regard to FDM, RDM. I hope you know the abbreviation research data management. I sometimes use it as well. So what happened? In 2015, the DFG published the first guidelines, very rough guidelines to research data management. That was very, very rough, very brief. In 2016, the FAIR data principles were introduced. And in 2022, rather late, but still, DFG published very detailed rules and recommendations, in particular for research data management throughout all the funding programs and all the funding levels. So it's very general, so it's applicable for all fields of research and for all funding schemes. And then, of course, we have specific recommendations for the particular fields of research. Now, if you look at the DFG homepage where there are recommendations for research data management, you see a lot of project-specific recommendations and guidelines and rules. Just to pick a few, and interestingly, they differ with respect to the formality, whether it's requirements or just guidelines or recommendations, and quite often they're given by the review boards of the DFG, the so-called Fachkollegien. So that's boards, review boards that sit between the reviewer and the grants committees. And they're divided by the fields of research. So for instance, the review board for the material science and material engineering, they published challenges in data management. Biodiversity guideline, the biodiversity community, they said, we give guidelines. Some of the social sciences, psychology, they give guidance or have a memorandum of rules. So you see, this is very diverse, and in that can answer to the specific needs of the particular communities. Now, one of the major aspects and topics we come across in research data management in collaborative research centers is the question, where can I ask for costs, for finances, for data management in a collaborative research center? In 2022, I mentioned before, when we published very specific recommendations for the diverse fields of research, we also changed the way where we ask in collaborative research centers templates for any not criteria, for any strategies, for any concepts for research data management. And what we do is, in the general part of a CRC template, one has to describe and explain the data management concept for the entire CRC. Now, this is general, every CRC has to do that. Now, when it comes to a particular program or work program you want to follow with a data management, in the CRC, there are actually 3 options to do that. And I'll try to describe and delineate them from another. The first one is if you do standard data management. So that is supporting the scientific projects with data management plans, with any standards in the community, in the genesis, and in working with data, but also in maybe feeding their data into larger repositories or databases. This is sort of standard data management, and that can be done by a data steward usually, and can be asked for the costs in the administrative project. So this is rather, say, low level. This is support, this is some basic data management, and there's no particular project be necessary for. Then you have a lot of communities where data management is not that established like in others. So like the geosciences, astrophysics, they've been working with data management for decades of years. They can't all go to the Atacama Desert, collect their data, they have to share. Other communities are not that much used to it. And from the history, I suppose material science is an area where data management is increasing, but it's not been there for the last 20 or 30 years. Now, in these areas, it might be necessary that infrastructure has to be developed or has to be adopted, adjusted to an existing infrastructure which cannot be integrated into the CRC right away. So there's really intellectual work necessary on part of the research data management, which cannot be done sort of as they go by a data steward. Now for that, one can apply for what we called INF project. The acronym is a bit awkward, actually. It's the abbreviation for information infrastructure, where nobody can actually imagine anything from it. So call it an RDM project. This RDM project actually requires a proper work program where you really explain what you establish, what you want to develop, where like it's workflow systems, workflow pipelines, there's repositories need to be developed, these kind of things. Now the third option, and that's rather rarely used because it's rarely necessary, but it actually we do see that from time to time, is a scientific project in the computer science. So sometimes it's really necessary that from the computer science point of view, like methods need to be developed. And that is a scientific work in the computer science. It's not only data management, but it's really computer science which needs to be done. So where a PhD thesis is the thing that actually comes out of it. We see that, as I say, we see that rarely, but it does happen. So the delineation is where a PhD thesis is really justified, then it's a scientific project, but that's computer science, it's not not RDM. Where lots of intellectual work from the research data management point of view is necessary, That's an INF project or RDM project. And where there's more or less its support, its guidance, its help with integrating data into existing structures, that is standard RDM and could be done by a data steward in the administrative project. Okay, so that is RDM in CRCs from the sort of application point of view. What do we? I said what we see in INF projects or RDM projects. That is really intellectual work. We do have a template for that, and there is a list. It's not enumerating, but there's a list of things which can be applied for and which can be done in an RDM project. Now, one of the big challenges, and it came on one of the slides very briefly at the bottom, that the data are IE ready, so artificial intelligence ready. That is a topic which we now see and which we try to sort of increase the awareness that data, and it's what I see is all the scientific fields of science and humanities. So making data AI ready is a topic which seems to be aware of in the material sciences. It is not by far the case in every other field of research or the humanities. So there is a big challenge to actually have that in mind and consider that. Now, I was also asked by Heiko Weber to say a few words about the core support by the hosting universities and institutions. That is always an aspect which we need to discuss, or which is discussed at the peer reviews, the on-site peer reviews we have for the CRCs. And there, again, we see a great variety, now not between the fields of research, but between the universities. There are universities like Göttingen, for instance, with the GWDG, so they have a completely autonomous institution to run the data management together with others. So it's scientific data mining and everything. We have the Leibniz Center for High Computing in Munich, which is shared by the two Munich universities, which run their data management in this institution. But we also have small universities for which it's rather difficult to actually establish a profound a core facility for data management. So we need to discriminate between these institutions. And considering that, or bearing that in mind, we see different stages of elaboration and sophistication in these institutions. So at some, really groundwork needs to be done, a lot of groundwork. Others have established that pretty well already. What we do expect in every CRC application is the support by the university, by the hosting institutions, and that can vary between staff or maybe savings, putting data into the infrastructure at the universities. What we always want to see when they apply for the third funding period, so that's the years 9 to 12, that there's a concept, a strategy of sustaining the data and the infrastructure that has been established and had been built. So that is something to make sure it actually sustains at the university or at the institution, wherever that is. And that is actually part of the review and part of the result that then goes to the grants committee. So it actually makes a difference whether a university is very active in supporting that or whether it sort of stays back. We fund research data management in every aspect. So we fund it in an administrative project where a data steward and maybe direct costs are applied for. we fund these RDM projects, and we fund the scientific projects in computer science. It may be, looking into the future without sort of being sure that it comes that way, but the development may be that the very core data management in the future has to be cared for by the university, because it is something the university has to provide. Now, what is possible already, and I suppose it'll be increasing in the future, that these core facilities, they need to have some sort of sustainability. They need to have a concept of how they run their system, how they run their staff in the future. Now, we see that from other core facilities, maybe animal facilities. That's far from your topic, but you may have heard from. Or proteomics, or large imaging facilities. They're established as facilities at the universities, but when they have a schedule of fees, or fees regulations for everybody who's making use of their service, these costs can be applied for at the DFG. So with the animal costs, the clear costs, which can be applied for. And I could imagine the same actually applies for some core facilities at German universities which have these fees regulations. So for instance, I mentioned the Leibniz Center in Munich. They do have a clear schedule of fees, and there we can finance actually the service that's been asked for from these core facilities. It is rather difficult where there's no fees regulation, because then where can you hang on to? I suppose this is increasing in the future with more core facilities being established. Right, and the last aspect, I mentioned that already, is sustainability. Of course, everything you establish, you develop, you don't want to disappearing after the maybe FAIRmat consortium terminates. Nobody knows the future of any NFDI consortia, but of course each consortia is making plans for the time after, and has to. So as I mentioned already, one of the aspects would be to integrate it in some sort of core facility institution and have it sustainable by fees to internal and external users. What is also very important is data literacy. So training, in particular, the young scientists, but actually everybody at the university. You may have come across a very well-established professor who sort of is a bit awkward with respect to data management. So training everybody, data literacy is a great aspect, is a great topic in sustaining the entire topic. The connection to the suitable NFDI consortia, that's a large point in the templates, and also with respect to sustainability, but also that is something we expect in every CRC template, that the connection to the suitable and valid NFDI consortia is made. And making use of every core facility, internal and external, national and international, is something that can foster sustainability and sort of make this network a very strong one. Yeah, with that, I like to close. I hope there was one or two aspects new to you, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.